Welcome back, everyone, to episode 18, possibly the penultimate episode of the Bloodborne lore play that we've been doing. So we've got a lot to catch up on. Turns out I decided to go 4 episodes between recaps on the events that have gone on during the playthrough up to this point. We've got a lot to cover. So we're going to do a recap just like we had in the last couple episodes. I will put a notice on the screen for when the recap actually ends, so if you just want to jump straight into the action, you can do so. Also, I know staring at a character just standing still can probably get boring after 30 or 40 minutes, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to splice in some B-roll from the fighting that I had with Lawrence and the Orphan of Kos. So you have something to look at while I'm babbling. Hopefully it won't be too distracting, but who knows, maybe you just want to listen instead of watching me get my butt handed to me multiple times. But just to put us back into the place and time that we were at all the way back in episode 14, we had just finished our initial fight with the first hunter, Ludwig, and we were doing a little bit of cleanup back in the Hunter's Nightmare, so way back. We've covered a lot of ground since then, so bear with me, but I think everything that we're going to go over today does have some value, especially in establishing where we are, what we're trying to do, and hopefully if we manage to beat the game today, you won't have to sit through another one of these. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this will be the last recap, and then if I do anything else for this particular long play, maybe it'll just be giving the short version of what the heck happened throughout this gameplay. But I think this will get us up to speed, so let's go ahead and get started. We returned to the entrance of the Hunter's Nightmare to do a little cleanup, picking up the old hunter gloves. The description states that hunters believed for a time that certain metals warded off beast blood. There is no evidence to suggest that this is true, but the mention of superstition suggests that hunters were not necessarily employed and or deployed for their intellect, certainly not late in the course of the beast's scourge. At that point, they were just employing random villagers to go out and conduct the hunts because they didn't have the manpower. Likely that would be tied to the Hunter's Nightmare. It could also be that people were just dying too quickly to keep up. We finally defeated the hunter wielding the minigun. The irony, of course, there is that I didn't kill that hunter. He just fell through the map. But we acquired the Gatling gun, and further back in the cave, we found the amygdalin arm, which was being guarded by a blood-starved beast. Curiously, it appears in a cave that is steeped in a river of blood, so I don't know if it was actually blood-starved or if it was merely chased in there. The description of the Gatling gun notes that this portable version of the stationary gun operated by Jura in Old Yarnum was the weapon of choice of the youngest of Jura's 3 companions. When we approached Jura in Old Yarnum, we were accosted by another hunter, likely one of the other 2 companions, and the third is very likely the hunter that appeared to have committed suicide in the ruins near Jura's tower. That was the gentleman who was sitting in a chair inside of one of the burnt-out buildings. It appears that the youngest had become blood drunk and was claimed by the Nightmare. This and the other gentleman's suicide may very well have been what set Jura on his path to protecting the beasts of Old Yarnum. Now, I have read some theories that it is possible that the reason he was so keen on guarding the back end of Old Yarnum is the fact that the blood-starved beast may have been one of his companions. I don't know if they offer significant evidence to support that theory, but it is one that floats out there. The description of the amygdalin arm confirms that amygdala, and likely all amygdalae, are in fact great ones. We're officially god killers. Technically, Abriatus would also qualify us for that title because we killed her before we got to amygdala, or maybe it was after. I think it was after, but in any case, we're god killers. We enter the Nightmare version of the Grand Cathedral, and upon the throne of the altar, we finally find Lawrence, the founder of the Healing Church. He holds the eye pendant, which states that there are 2 cathedrals in the Hunter's Dream, curiously not worded as Hunter's Nightmare, although that may have just been a typo. One where you and Lawrence currently reside is one of the cathedrals, and there's a second that contains the Healing Church's private research hall. The eye pendant is the key to entry of that research hall. Along the way back to the second cathedral, we encounter the Herald Hunter, who we first met in a shortcut back in the Nightmare Chapel. Initially, he questioned our motives for being here before leaving us to our task. In our second encounter, he laments over the head of Ludwig as that was... Let me try that again. In our second encounter, he laments over the head of Ludwig that he was... What did I put there? True to his own ideals even to the end. He then warns us that the nightmare draws hunters in due to their own misdeeds and implores us to expose the whole charade, or charade, if you will. After a brief and unsuccessful attempt to defeat the bloody Crow of Canehurst, which I died to many, many times, we made our way back to the second cathedral, and we find a corridor below it that's full of jail cells. One prisoner nearby is muttering about the duty of hunters while bashing his head against a wall. So clearly he is, if not completely insane, on the bare edges of his sanity. So another prisoner rings a silent bell and warns us to leave the nightmare, as some secrets are better left alone. In a third cell, we find the Fist of Gratia. The description states that it belonged to a hunter woman named Simple Gratia, who was hopeless in handling firearms. Given that we find the weapon on a rather large hunter corpse, likely Gratia herself, it appears that all of the prisoners in these cells were hunters who committed a crime. Or it's possible that they found out some secret that should not have been uncovered. Hard to say either way. We don't exactly see a signpost that says what their crimes were. We enter the main hall of the second cathedral and find beds lined with medical supplies and a few hunter corpses. Given the proximity to the jail cells containing hunters below them, one could conclude that the healing church chose to punish said prisoners by experimenting on them. The altar contains several sculptures engaged in a combination of scientific experiment, one holding a book, and ritual, one holding a bell, and the centermost statue appears very similar to Master Willem. He's wearing that mitre on his head that Willem was seen wearing back at Bergenworth. The eye pendant is placed inside the brain of their patient, a very literal representation of lining the brain with eyes. Under the altar, we find another altar, this one very identical to the one in the main Grand Cathedral, and on it sits the human version of Lawrence's skull. The description states that Lawrence seeks this skull, and it is a symbol of his past and the humanity that he failed to protect. Upon returning to Lawrence with the skull in our possession, he awakens and the fight is on. If you managed to sit through all of that fighting in episode 14, congratulations. That was a long episode, and believe me, I had to do a lot of editing to get it down to the point that there was quite a few edits in that video. After a very long series of fights and a little off-screen farming, we did finally defeat Lawrence, earning a late bit of justice for the many, many victims of the Scourge in Yharnam. We also acquire the Beast's Embrace Rune. Its description states that the rune was discovered while experimenting in ways to control the Beast Scourge, but failure to implement it safely made it a forbidden rune. Knowledge of this rune became a foundation of the Healing Church. In other words, they found their way to evolve as they sought all along, but the evolution was uncontrollable, so they sought other means to achieve the same result. Hence, the more widespread use of Old Blood, which basically just made the Scourge far worse than it was before. The rune is one of two transformations in the game. This one actually transforms us into a beast, but it is a controllable form, at least for us. Other people, who knows, they may have all tried it and then eventually became uncontrollable beasts that had to be put down. We return to the Bloody Crow of Canehurst and finally defeat him, just like Lawrence, and become the savior of Eileen. The Bloody Crow was carrying a Blood Rapture rune, which we initially found on the Shadows of Yharnam, the Tumerian Queen's servants. The implication here is that the inhabitants of Canehurst are in some way related to the Tumerians, which we've talked about at length quite a few times already. We return to Eileen, who offers us the Hunter rune and the Crow Hunter badge as a reward. She then drifts off, although we don't know for certain that she died. It is very likely that she did so. The Hunter Rune represents the official pledge of the Hunter of Hunters, who are bound to admonish and likely kill those who become addled with blood. The Crow Hunter badge, meanwhile, acknowledges that Hunter of Hunters, that's how they phrase it in the game, it sounds a little odd the way I say it there, quietly pass down the pledge from generation to generation, and usually to outsiders from the hinterlands. That would make us a natural fit to succeed Eileen, because we're an outsider as well. We're not from Yharnam. We return to the Hunter's Dream and acquire the Crow Feather Garb, which states that Hunter of Hunters give the dead a sky burial, which I put a little message on the screen for that episode. It involves a funeral rite where you leave the dead in high places, such as on mountaintops, to be claimed by either just natural, the weather, elements, whatever, or to be consumed by carrion eaters like crows, all in the hopes of returning them to the Hunter's Dream. We make our way back to the research hall. The main hall is decrepit. Floor tiles are ripped up and smashed everywhere. The lowest section of the floor is full of corpses and poisonous water. I'm going to use quotey fingers there. And a patient is digging around in the pool. His head is seemingly replaced by a large pulsating mass, possibly his now encephalitic brain. The patient asks us if we have seen his eyes and claims they fell in the pool. He is seemingly unaware that his head has become enlarged. We also find a few patients who have been bound around the arms and legs, reduced to wriggling around on the floor like worms. No idea why that happened. May have been part of their experiments to try to convert people into whatever they were doing there. The upper floors have crazed patients roaming around, all with similar enlarged heads. They attack us whenever we approach. The shelves themselves on these upper floors are lined with medical supplies, and there are chains everywhere, possibly to secure the supplies, possibly for restraining patients. We don't know for certain. In the patient rooms, piles of bodies are lying on the floor, and the bedding is blood-soaked and filthy. One patient begs us to kill him, and another admits a form of guilt for something unnamed. But given the jail cells not far below, it appears that these patients are in part, if not in full, former hunters that have been experimented upon. We also get reinforcement of that notion because at least a couple of these patients are extremely aggressive, more aggressive than a normal human being would ever be. I mean, the one that picks up one of the IV stands and wields it like a club, he nearly kills me in the episode when we went through the research hall. So I have serious doubts that these were just regular patients or villagers that were kidnapped from the village. I think this was very clearly hunters that were being experimented on. Sorry, I got lost here. All right, there we go. A third patient begs for someone named Lady Maria to take his hand and to not let him drown. Further up in the hall, the shelves of medicine are lined with booby traps and explode when approached. So it appears that at some point the research hall was abandoned, but they didn't want people to find out what was going on, so whoever it was, probably someone from the Healing Church, was setting traps inside the research hall to try to kill anyone that got a little bit too close to whatever it was they were doing there. A few patients are seen seemingly decapitated, and in a room near them there are an equivalent number of writhing, bodiless, enlarged heads. The experiments they've undergone appear to make the two separable without killing either one. The body can walk around free of a head without any consequences, and the head can be detached and survive as well. The decapitated heads attack us by flinging tentacles out at us, causing frenzy buildup. We find an equipable enlarged head in the corner of the room, and as disgusting as that sounds, you can actually put it on. The description states that you can hear a sticky, dripping sound and water seeping up from the depths. This may allude to the nature of the experiment itself. Near an elevator shortcut, we find an operating room with a few restrained corpses. The bodies are flanked by villagers in wheelchairs, and the bodies are impaled with lots of sharp implements. It's possible that some uninitiated villagers found a way into the research hall, found these patients, and slaughtered them out of horror. Their presence could also just be a coincidence, because there are some wheelchair-bound villagers that were up inside the chamber, and one of them is very clearly staring at one of those bodies. So I would tend to lean towards the notion that they didn't know what they were looking at and just felt that it was something that needed to be killed. We find another patient begging for Lady Maria's assistance. It appears that this Lady Maria was a caretaker for the patients, if not the party responsible for the experiments that they've undergone. Back on the bottom floor of the research hall, in a shortcut room, we find Adeline, a patient that has been bound to a chair. She asks for something called brain fluid, which she describes as mushy and murky. At the very top of the research hall, we find a patient and a decapitated head, both muttering about the sound of water, sometimes in contradictory terms. We kill the head, because I'm a monster, and we find the brain fluid that Adeline was seeking. Shortly thereafter, the head revives, seemingly unfazed by her attack. The description of the brain fluid is critical. Number one, it explains that the heads of the patients enlarge until nothing else of their body remains. Number two, it notes that the Healing Church drew a clear correlation between Great Ones and the ocean. Number three, the Cerebral Patients, quotey fingers there, were made to imbibe water until they could hear the howl of the sea, so they were drinking water to achieve this weird transformation of their heads. And four, the resulting brain fluid in the heads writhed around and was the initial makings of internal eyes. Consumption of mere water alone, even ocean water, would not induce this kind of transformation, so the water must have been treated or possibly tainted with some other substance. After a death and a respawn, we run into the Herald Hunter again, who notes that this wretched research hall is the true face of the Healing Church, and says that if we seek the source of the nightmare, we must ascend to the astral clock tower and kill Lady Maria. We go back to Adeline and provide her with the brain fluid, which she consumes. I mean, she doesn't have a mouth, so I'm not sure how exactly she consumed it. And then she immediately begins to hear the sticky sound that other patients have talked about. She offers us her blood, as strange as that is, adding that she was once a blood saint, similar to Adela back in Uden Chapel. Blood saints were given a special treatment, possibly a direct infusion of old blood, in order to cultivate usable blood. That would also explain how the blood was being produced, because the Healing Church in Bergenworth finding old blood down in the depths of the labyrinth doesn't mean that they had an unlimited supply of it. There had to be a limit to how much of it they had available to give to people. So what was more likely, and this makes a lot of sense, is they treated certain individuals of the Healing Church with the old blood, and then those individuals basically just acted as blood donors on a constant basis to produce the blood that was found throughout Yharnam. That is probably the best explanation I've heard for how it was getting into the population of anything in the game. We return to the Hunter's dream briefly and catch Gehrman asleep yet again. This time he is explicitly begging someone to save him from the dream, which he is trapped in. It appears that we have another dream to end, aside from the Hunter's nightmare. Back in the research hall, we acquire the underground cell key, which notes that the prison area is in fact used to seal away hunters that represent things left unseen and knowledge left unknown. Adeline pleads with us to find more brain fluid, and that the sticky sound she hears is fading. Her timbre suggests that she was a willing subject to the Healing Church's experiments, unlike the rest of the patients that we find around the hall. We open a large set of doors at the top of the research hall and encounter the living failures, likely an early attempt by the Healing Church and or the choir to create a celestial. Their heads are not mushroom-shaped like the celestial mobs, but these creatures can open portals into the cosmos and, like the celestials, are housed in a garden of lumen flowers. These particular flowers are in bloom, with a much larger wooded plant in the center. When we encountered the celestial emissary, all of those flowers were actually just buds. They had not bloomed yet. It is important to note that the soil of the garden is littered with decomposed bodies, possibly used as fertilizer for the flowers, possibly just dead living failures. We don't know. We return to the research hall and locate a second detached head possessing brain fluid. This one asks Lady Maria, talking to us, if she'll ever become an egg, noting that she's already a robin. The implication here is likely that the transformation of her head was considered an evolutionary step in the right direction, but not enough for the church's liking, and she may have known that. We feed Adeline her, Adeline, I keep changing it, her second dose of brain fluid, and she presents us with the balcony key. Sorry, I gotta scroll here. A lot of text, sorry. The balcony unlocked by this key gives us access to the nightmare version of the Lumen Flower Garden where we fought the Celestial Emissary. It is being tended by patients who attack us by opening less effective versions of the portals that the celestial mobs use. So these patients were more successful attempts than the ones that are found throughout the research hall, but still not quite what the church was looking for. On a seated body that seems to have been observing the patients tending the garden, we find the Black Sky Eye. It is a reusable arcane item, the description of which states that it was blessed with a phantasm, it's just an eye, and that it contains a vast stretch of dark sky with an endless meteor storm. The curious part of this is that most of the offensive arcane items we found have either been or contained phantasms. Just an important note, a lot of what humans are capable of doing in this game, tapping into powers from the cosmos, involve phantasms, those little slugs. We return to Adeline's chamber and find that she's now become a detached head like the others that we found the brain fluid on. She asks us one more time for brain fluid, claiming that she wants her baptism and wants to be something. Being the only remaining source of brain fluid that we can find, and knowing that these detached heads recover with startling speed, we slay Adeline and recover her brain fluid. She then recovers, and we give her a taste of her own medicine, so to speak. Adeline thanks us for the third dose and claims that she can see a shape, bleeding and bending. We receive the Milkweed Rune, which was likely the shape she saw, and then she dies. The item description of the rune states that the Milkweed Rune was envisioned by Adeline, meaning that we are likely the only person to have received and or used it, and that transforms us into a lumenwood, that kind of pale whitish blue stalk of broccoli is a lumenwood. Lumenwood, like the flowers, feed phantasms in their luscious bed. So the phantasms that facilitate the transformation of people into celestials are attracted to these lumen plants. We keep interchanging lumen wood and lumen flowers, but they find them to be a source of food. The celestial mob's compulsion to return to the lumen flower garden during our fight with the emissary was likely involuntary, perceived source of safety by the phantasms. I don't know if this is 100% confirmed because you never hear or see anyone say this in the game, but it almost seems like once a person has phantasms inside their body, they may lose control of their bodies. Don't know that for certain. We return to the Lumenwood Garden and open the doors to the Astral Clock Tower. Lady Maria is found seated inside and appears to have committed suicide. Her body is tilted to one side, with her arm hanging free and dripping blood. This could have been an attempt to escape the nightmare, or perhaps punishment for something for which she feels profound shame. Like, say, presiding over a filthy research hall full of deformed patients? Hard to say. We attempt to examine her corpse, and she awakens, warning us of the secrets that beckon so sweetly and promising an honest death to cure us of our wild curiosity. So yet again, we have people who keep telling us that there's something awful ahead, and they're not going to let us see it. They're going to fight to the death to stop us from getting there. Lady Maria is possibly the voice that we heard on the entrance into the Hunter's Nightmare, cursing the fiends and their children too. After a few attempts, we do defeat Lady Maria and receive the Celestial Dial. The item allows us to realign the mechanism of the clock tower and access a village behind it. I don't have this in the notes here, but I would also add that we did find that the deep sea rune and a symbol that appears at the bottom of that clock are basically identical. The only difference is the deep sea rune is pointed in one direction with one tendril pointed down and all the other tendrils pointed up. And the symbol that we saw in the astral clock was one tendril pointed to the sky and the others pointed down. So just an interesting observation there. Let's see, where was I? Here we go. We make our way down to the shoreline of the fishing hamlet, and we find that the shoreline on either side is lined with ship masts, much like all the other dream realms that we've encountered. And through the water, we can make out buildings in Yharnam. Once again, the dream realms are apparently tiered, and this one may in fact sit directly above the actual waking world. We don't know that for certain. It could just be that the bodies of water that one would, in theory, traverse the dream realms through all happen to sit one on top of the other, and maybe you can see through all of them. This is the closest we've gotten to an actual body of water where we could see through it to other realms. We've had just little tiny glimpses of other stuff in other realms, and in the fishing hamlet we can literally see buildings, multiple buildings, and very clear examples of them. The tower that Abriatus is in, the Grand Cathedral, what appears to be Uden Chapel, we can see all of that stuff through the water. We approach the entrance of the village, and we find a man muttering about Bergenworth, calling them blasphemous murderers and blood-crazed fiends. He also curses them and their children and their children's children in the name of someone named Mother Koss, and begging for mercy for the poor, wizened child. Now, if you're like me and you hear that word and you're going, I'm not sure what they're saying. Wizened basically means withered or wrinkled with age almost. So in this case, they're basically saying that there is a child somewhere that has become malnourished, worn out from, well, I won't say abuse, but we'll find out when we get to that point. The man is tall, lanky, and pale, and he possesses webbed feet and slimy skin. He appears to be part fish. It is possible that this man was responsible for the creation of the Hunter's Nightmare, but it is not clear at that point in the game. We enter the fishing hamlet and find a man hung upside down by his feet, with his head removed and his hands bound. Again, this posture is symbolically referenced on the Bold Hunter's Mark item and the Hunter Rune. Hunting, at least in the world of Bloodborne, it seems, is best represented by the desanguinating of one's prey. And by that I mean cutting off the head and draining the entire body of blood. I think he would also cut the wrists in that case so that the lowest hanging parts bleed out. Also, quite a bit of the clothing that you find in the Healing Church has the Hunter Rune on it. Using the Hunter's Lantern next to the corpse, we return to the Hunter's Dream and purchase Lady Maria's set. The item description states that Lady Maria was among the first hunters and a student of Gehrman. This set also draws a distinct but distant lineage to Annalise, Queen of Cainhurst Castle, making Lady Maria a descendant of the Tumerians. We also learn that Gehrman has a curious mania for Maria, quotey fingers there because that was from the description. In other words, he was in love with her. How deep was this mania? Well, he made a human-sized doll in her likeness, the doll that we see during our visits to the Hunter's Dream. One that is anatomically complete, I might add, seeing as that he encourages us to use the doll early in the game, should we see fit. He literally means having sex with the doll. The doll, during a bit of dialogue, notes that moments ago she sensed a liberation from heavy shackles somewhere deep within. This dialogue can occur immediately after Lady Maria is defeated, reinforcing the notion that the doll is a facsimile of Maria and that they are connected. We return to the fishing hamlet and approach the fishman with the Milkweed Rune equipped. He speaks more of the curse and implores us to listen for the baneful chants and weep with them as one in a trance, or one in trance. It was supposed to rhyme. We then receive the Accursed Brew. The description states that it is the skull of a local from the violated fishing village, and that it was forcibly searched for eyes. So Byrgenwerth, much like the healing church that followed, was not adverse to vicious, horrifying acts in their attempts to evolve. This makes Master Willem just as culpable for the events in Yharnam as any other person, despite his decrepit state when we find him in Byrgenwerth. So if there was anyone out there who was watching that particular episode when we got to Byrgenwerth and I killed Master Willem and thought maybe that was unnecessary, he had it coming. All of what we saw in the fishing hamlet was his fault, basically. The fishing hamlet has barrels full of creatures that look more like a blend of squids and giant slugs than fish. The inhabitants of the village, much like the addled man wandering the entrance, are fish-like in nature, sporting dorsal fins, and they're covered in barnacles. They attack us on sight, seeing us as just another of Byrgenwerth's villainous hunters. Surprise, surprise. The nature of their appearance would suggest that the tainted water that the patients of the research hall were being forced to imbibe likely came from this village and transformed these villagers' bodies in a different way. So, while the patients were forcibly imbibing that water, they strapped down to tables and just given what I believe was once referred to as the water cure, a torture technique where you just force feed water to people. They may have just been doing the same thing to the research patients. And in the case of the fishing village, the tainted water was all around them. So it was contacting their skin. It was getting into the food they ate, the water they drank. They weren't being forced to consume large quantities, so their evolution was probably a little more subtle and over time, instead of just having their heads explode, kind of. Where am I? Sorry, I got lost again. Here we go. We find a much larger villager tucked away between some buildings. This one appears to be part shark or even sperm whale in the head and face area. And he beats me significantly quite a few times. Not necessarily that one, but the ones down in the well. Villager is found hacking at a hunter's corpse with a cleaver. We defeat it and recover the Herald set from the corpse. The description states that certain church hunters obfuscate their identities to slip into the city unnoticed, acting as spies to detect early signs of the scourge or perhaps even find signs where there were none. The location of this set suggests that a spy or multiple spies entered the village as a friend or perhaps as a beggar, observed the villagers, and reported their findings to Byrgenwerth and or the Healing Church, setting the genocide in motion. And I think we could probably assume they committed genocide. Killed all of them, tried to harvest them for organs. They weren't interested in keeping any of them alive. The question that this raises is, the Herald Hunter that we meet on multiple occasions, is he a spy and if he is, who is he spying on? Was he spying on us? We don't know. In the center of the hamlet is a well with a ladder descending into the depths. We go into the well with the familiar singing of a winter lantern nearby. A pair of the shark/whale men are at the bottom. One of them carries a very important item, the Rakuyo, and it took me a long time to get that weapon. The Rakuyo's description states that the weapon originates from Canehurst and that Lady Maria wielded it. One day she abandoned the weapon, casting it into a dark well when she could stomach it no longer. So the placement of this weapon suggests that she was involved in the assault on the fishing hamlet, which likely was the catalyst for her eventual suicide in the nightmare, maybe in real life as well. Back in the hamlet proper, we venture into a wooded area patrolled by villagers and their fish dog companions, with the heads of the dogs resembling those of angler fish, minus the little dangling light in front. On a hill overlooking a beach with a curious-looking body, which we kind of look at, and I had to pause the video in that episode and highlight it again. We find a gravestone with a single lumen flower placed in front of it. During that episode, I offered the idea that this was possibly the final resting place of Lady Maria. However, it is also possible that she's the one who placed the gravestone there and that it was for the body that we can see down on the beach below. Inside the nearby lighthouse, we find the Herald Hunter lying on the ground and dying. He laments that he's made a botch of things and that he can hear the bell even now, and that the beast-tied assassin is after him without end. The hunter tells us that this village is the true secret and the origin of the hunter's nightmare, and implores us to bring an end to the horror. He then ends that the suffering of all hunters for their forefathers' sins isn't fair. He dies, and we receive his weapon, Simon's bowblade, as well as a key to the cell of a lone madman who rings a bell that emits no sound. So what they're telling you pretty directly is the gentleman that was in that row of jail cells, sitting next to a bed and ringing a bell that wasn't making any sound, that's who we need to go kill, because he's hunting people in the fishing hamlet. The description of Simon's bowblade establishes that Simon was one of the first healing church hunters. Assuming that the Herald Hunter was in fact Simon, his presence in the hunter's nightmare may not have been voluntary at all. He kind of makes it sound like that he's there of his own volition, and he appears to have his sanity, but maybe he didn't have a choice. We return to the cell block below the research hall and immediately hear the bell of the beast-tied assassin who attacks. We defeat the summon and receive the first piece of his assassin set, Brador's Testimony, which is a hood comprised of a cleric beast's scalp and horns. We open the cell to Brador himself, who admonishes me for coming to kill him. He points out that killing him will not right any of our past wrongs, and upon slaying him, adds that nothing changes, and such is the nature of man. We receive the blood letter upon his death, which confirms that he served as a healing church assassin, even in his imprisonment. So, basically, if he had a task, he needed to go out and take care of someone who was getting too close to the church's secrets, he'd ring his little bell and he'd be able to go out after them. And because the bell served a different purpose than your standard summoning bells, he could do that over and over until he killed his prey, essentially. We examine Brador's testimony, which states that Brador slayed this cleric beast, who turned out to be a compatriot and then chose to seal himself away in a cell. The healing church provided him with a soundless bell so that he could continue to serve as an assassin and guardian of the church's secrets. While we're still in the cell block, we return to the cell of the muttering hunter and put him out of his misery and receive Yanamura's set. The set established that Yanamura was a foreign member of the League of Confederates who went mad after staring into the source of impurity. This character is pretty widely considered to be a hint by From Software to the project that they had started working on immediately following Bloodborne's release, which was Sekiro. Dark Souls 3 was actually the next release in the order of games that came out, but they were likely already well into development at that point on Dark Souls 3. So I think it's pretty widely known that From Software juggles two different games at a time, at least currently. So this was the one that was worked on by the group that did the primary work on the initial Dark Souls game. Dark Souls 2 was worked on by the quote-unquote B team. I know a lot of people didn't like that game. I happen to be one of the people that does like the game a lot. Dark Souls 3 could very well have also been a project of the B team, and the A team worked on Sekiro, which, by the way, if you are watching these episodes as they come out, Elden Ring has come out, and if you can follow the release order of which studio, part of the studio would work on which game, Elden Ring is very likely a B-team game, guys. So if you love the game, why don't you give a little love to From Software's B-team? They're not bad. They do good work. We make our way back to the lighthouse and delve into the fish hatchery below the hamlet. This hatchery is packed with seemingly millions of those squid slug creatures, as well as the nautilus shell creatures that are similar to the one that fell out of the sky earlier in the hunter's nightmare. In the nearby caverns, we find a passage leading out to the beach containing the body that we could see from the lighthouse. The main approach of the cavern is lined by dozens of the Nautilus creatures who have fully emerged from their shells and have their heads bowed in prayer towards the beach. On the beach, we find the corpse of the Great One, Kos, the source of the nightmare, the cause of the transformations experienced in the fishing hamlet, the likely source of the tainted water fed to the patients of the research hall, and the likely cause of Master Willem's epiphany that led to the search for eyes on the inside. We will get to that at a later point. From Kos's body births the Orphan of Kos. Yes, that is an actual birth that you witness. The wizened child that was spoken of by the addled fishman at the entrance of the fishing hamlet. He emerges, stares up into the pupil of the blood-drunk hunter's eye, and begins to cry. This could have happened for one of several reasons, him crying. Number one, he knows that his mother was killed by the hunters of Bergenworth. 2, he knows that great ones always lose their children, and he was never going to survive anyway. 3, he knows that he, like the hunters, is trapped in a nightmare and cannot escape. And 4, he knows that he is the source of the nightmare. We don't know which is the reason. We just know he is birthed, he looks up to the sky and starts crying. We fight the Orphan of Kos many, many times and eventually do defeat him, and we receive the Kos parasite. The description states that Kos's body washed up on the coast, and its insides were teeming with these tiny parasites, unlike any ever found in humans. It also notes that Kos parasites stimulate phantasms inhabiting Illuminwood. While this is meant to be a direct hint on the proper use of the Kos parasite as a weapon, it is also very likely critical to understanding the path of evolution to a celestial mob and or emissary. Consumption and or implantation of phantasms was never going to be enough. They likely needed additional stimulation by these Kos parasites to enact the transformation. Discovery of these parasites set the members of the Healing Church and the eventual choir on their path to communication with a Great One. Kos was also pregnant at the time that it was found dead and or possibly killed. We don't know. There's no wounds that we can see. There's no weapons nearby. We just see a dead body. There is a possibility that Maria, upon discovery of this, the fact that it was pregnant, lost the will to continue her work as a hunter, casting her Rakuyo weapon aside and eventually committing suicide. Again, the body of Kos is what some people believe that lone gravestone up by the lighthouse is meant to be for, but we don't know. There is one more bit of revelation here that we will discuss at the end of the game. It's a little bit too important to talk about right now, but I promise I'll come back to it. We do examine the body of Kos and find that it has humanoid arms and a human face. It is possible that whatever transformed the people of this hamlet into fishmen that we... what did I put there? Sorry. Oh, boy. I worded that weird. All right, we'll try that again. We examine the body of Kos and find that it has humanoid arms and a human face. It is possible that whatever transformed the people of this hamlet into the fishmen that they are now came from this Great One. It is also possible that they were once, that Kos was once human itself and somehow evolved into a Great One. We don't know. A smoky black phantom emits from the body of Kos with what appears to be a skull and a spine. We hit it, and it dispels, ending the hunter's curse and theoretically freeing the inhabitants of the nightmare. Although for game purposes, the area remains open, it is also possible that the nightmare does not actually end until its source is removed. And since Kos was the source of the nightmare and her corpse remains on the beach, the nightmare stays open. I think it's just a game conceit, so you can go back and pick up anything that you may have forgotten when you went through the areas initially. A cutscene plays and a voice can be heard saying that the sweet child of Kos has returned to the ocean. It then repeats the line of the addled fishman from the entrance of the hamlet. A bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, accepting of all that there is and can be. The voice could possibly be that of the addled fishman himself before whatever happened that addled him. We don't know. Once again, the voice that we hear at the beginning of the DLC when we get pulled in is possibly Lady Maria, because she recognized that the Hunter's Nightmare existed due to the misdeeds of Bergenworth and the Healing Church, and possibly she was the one who announced to those that entered that they were now cursed themselves. We don't know for certain. Back in the Hunter's dream, the doll notes that Gehrman would normally be sleeping pretty restlessly, but tonight he is calm. It appears that the Hunter's curse has been felt by more than just those trapped in it. He may also know, without really knowing, that his beloved Lady Maria has been freed of the curse. We return back to the Advent Plaza where we fought the One Reborn and enter the chamber behind it to where the Mensis ritual was conducted. Again, we examined this initially after the One Reborn fight, but all of the School of Mensis attendants had died, including the leader in the middle, and based on the bindings that some of them had on, not all of them were willing participants. We reach out and touch the leader's body, and we end up transported back into the lecture building, the one that we had been taken to when we went to the Nightmare Frontier, only this time we're on the second floor. We find a note on a balcony overlooking a lecture room. It says, "Master Willem was right. Evolution without courage will be the ruin of our race." This may have alluded to the fact that the School of Mensis sought evolution through traversal of the Nightmare realms. This likely also means that the School of Mensis is responsible for the lecture building being adrift between the waking world and the dream realms. We don't know for certain, but it seems very likely. In a supply room near the lecture hall, we find a note that states, "The nameless moon presence beckoned by Lawrence and his associates. Pale blood." This note affirms that while we may have come to Yharnam seeking pale blood to cure our own affliction, pale blood is not actually a treatment. It never was. Pale blood is the moon presence, and likely a great one. The supply room has another note that simply states 3/3 chords. We'll discuss this at a later time as well. Smile. We descend a ladder to the first floor and enter the locked room on the first floor that was containing the Spider-Man, I'm using quotey fingers, that gave us the tonsil stone. He seems shocked that we not only survived our journey into the Nightmare Frontier, but also slayed his god, Amygdala. He then admonishes us for thinking ill of him and reminds us of the miracle that we bore witness to thanks to him. He then offers us the anti-clockwise Metamorphosis Rune. Nothing important to note there because we had already received that once back in the Forbidden Woods, I believe. We enter the doors on the second floor of the lecture hall and find ourselves in the Nightmare of Mensis. This particular nightmare shares similar environmental design and beasts to the Nightmare Frontier, suggesting that the leader of the School of Mensis was familiar with that nightmare and perhaps used it as inspiration for his own nightmare. In the distance, we can hear the faint sound of waves crashing against the shore, again reinforcing the connection of dream realms to bodies of water. Going up a hill, we find a corpse that was impaled, or perhaps I should say expaled. I don't know if that's a word, but basically the spear-like objects that are in his body appear to have come from inside of his body and shot out. Upon approaching the body, we find a view of a towering cathedral in the distance. And one, I call it a spire here in the notes, but I guess it would be a separate section of the building, to the side of the main cathedral lights up, emitting an ominous droning sound. When we step out into view of this part of the building, we begin to build frenzy, much like the frenzy caused by the winter lanterns. After long enough exposure to the frenzy, we see the spears start shooting out from our body. The frenzy buildup also afflicts the beasts that we are attacked by on our approach to the cathedral. It is very likely that frenzy is a physical reaction to the receipt and failure to process of eldritch knowledge that one receives in concert with certain kin and or great ones. Our minds may not be able to process the knowledge, but the blood in our bodies, which is now long tainted with old blood because we've been stabbing vials into our body for days at this point, and the blood in our body is what's reacting, shooting out of our body in the form of spears. After far too many attempts to ascend the hillside to the large cathedral, we finally do enter its halls. The walls are lined with eyes caught in webbing, and in the central chamber is a bunch of large spiders. Spiders, of course, are known for having many eyes themselves, so a theme is easy to find here. We walk onto a bridge between sections of the larger complex, and we can hear the sound of a baby crying again, this time clearer than any other part of the game thus far. We're attacked by a Scholar of Mensis, one of the very few that apparently made it into the nightmare safely, because we have not seen anyone else yet. Inside the second wing of the cathedral, we find the halls patrolled by small ironclad men called attendants, with another name attached, but we won't say it right now, who seem to have no interest in our presence initially. When we enter a larger library area, more of the attendants start to appear and become aggressive towards us. The library itself is seemingly half-formed with massive pits throughout and cages holding books rather than creatures or people in them. It's possible that in the formation of this nightmare, the host of it maybe started skipping some spots or blanking on some areas, or maybe just never considered any of them. Hard to say, but it's not a traditional library considering the massive pits in there. Pretty sure my local library doesn't have any bottomless pits in it. We make our way out into another open section of the building and find a curious sight. A crow that has the body of a crow but the head of a dog. And a little ways away, we find a dog with a crow head on it. Source of the nightmare either has a twisted imagination or no idea what dogs or crows look like. Back inside the building, we approach a smoky corridor and are attacked by some detached body parts held up like a marionette. Behind them is the boss of this area, Mikolash, who is identified as the host of the nightmare. Mikolash is wearing a Menses Cage on his head and rambles about Koss, asking if she hears our prayers, presumably the school's prayers, not just mine or his. He also says that he will not abandon the dream and that no one can stop him now. We pursue Mikolash through a maze of hazy corridors, eventually cornering him and defeating him, only for him to taunt us from elsewhere in the maze. He commends us for our hunter skills, but notes that we aren't too fast and that the nightmare swirls and churns unending. Basically, killing him wasn't going to be enough because, it's a nightmare and he's the host, so he can make projections of himself, essentially, and that we haven't figured that part out. Mikolash speaks more of Koss, asking her to grant us eyes, as she once did for Rom, and cleanse us of our beastly idiocy. This would suggest that Rom was not merely found. The Koss parasite was likely used to evolve Rom into a great one. It also reinforces the point that the School of Mensis was more in line with Bergenworth's view of evolution than the healing churches. So we'll try to make that make more sense probably towards the end for what everyone was trying to do. And I think I've said it once before, but we'll recap that again probably at the end of the game. He can also be heard howling throughout the fight, suggesting that his mental faculties are being strained to the breaking point. We finally catch up to him and defeat him a second time, this time for real. In his death throes, he laments that he is waking up and will forget everything. What he does not realize, however, is that the ritual that the school conducted to create and enter the nightmare killed all of them in the waking world. So, no, he will not be waking up. For our efforts, we receive the Menses Cage and a path to the upper areas of the cathedral. The description of the Menses Cage states that the cage restrains the will of the self, allowing one to see the profane world for what it is, and more importantly, acts as an antenna to facilitate contact with the Great Ones of the dream. Restraining the will of the self suggests that most of the school lacked the courage to evolve as Mikolash saw necessary, referring back to the note from the lecture hall. And perhaps upon seeing the horrors of the nightmare, Menses scholars were prone to self-harm, maybe trying to gouge out their own eyes or something. The antenna function shows a divergence of ideologies from those in the choir that chose to pursue celestials as a means of communication with the Great Ones. All right. that was way longer than I thought it was going to be. Whew. 55 minutes of talking. That was incredible. I need a drink. I don't know how people who talk for a living can do that. I would be worn out after about 20 minutes, and my throat was already starting to hurt at about 30 there, I think. All right, so we finished the recap. We're going to do something. We're going to actually move around, play the game. We have one half of an area left to examine. We're almost finished, guys. I head to Mergo's loft, middle. That may not be where we wanted to go. Where am I? Oh, yeah. Okay, we're in the right spot. I'm going to take a quick peek at the map I got in front of me here. Make sure that I'm going the right direction. Yes, I am. So we're nearing the end of our journey through the nightmare. We're going to start seeing all the awful things that the nightmare created by Mikolash involves, including some very freaky creatures. These crow dogs and dog crows. This is just the start, though. More yummy bloodstone chunks. I'll take all of them. Thank you. In fact, I think we're going to see something very awful. Here, the baby. Very soon here, we're going to see something that is truly a nightmare. Oh, sweet. I don't know I was getting this so early. I'm going to do something stupid. Yeah, that was stupid. There's an open window there that you can go inside of, and I missed. That leads us to an important area that we do need to go to. But that's also a shortcut. I believe that takes us all the way back down to the Hunter's Lantern, way down at the bottom, the base of the cathedral. It's all right. We didn't lose a ton of progress doing that. Oh, I hear a winter lantern. All right, the dog didn't follow me. All right, take two. Get my blood echoes back, because I'll probably botch this a second time. For some reason, this is not an easy jump to make. I missed it again. Splat. I think what I'll do is I'll unlock the path back up from the Hunter's Lantern at the bottom of the building, and then we'll try that stupid thing again. There is a very specific purpose for making that jump into that room. And it is lore related, if I'm not mistaken. So we want to make that jump, no matter how many times I fail it. nice touch I had never considered before. All of these cages that go down, up and down the building side, they all have wrappings on the side. And that wrapping is clearly meant to keep you from view of the tower that has whatever is zapping us with its eyeballs. Alright, so we should be good to go now. The passage is unlocked. Back on. This takes us just back to the entrance to the fight with Mikolash, so there's no reason to go back there yet. There will be a reason to go back there eventually. We have not gotten to it. Alright, come on. Where's the opening? There it is and go! I made it! That took too many tries. So, we could hear winter lanterns earlier, and there's a reason for that. Oh, I do have them equipped. We're going to find some winter lanterns outside. And I'm probably going to die a bunch. But we do need to go out here. Inflicted organ. I don't know if we've picked up one of those before. It's just a material for the chalice rituals. Inflicted organ. A special material used in a holy chalice ritual. Special body parts collected by the Healing Church. What was this gruesome bait used to lure? And then it just talks about the special rite that you complete. It basically makes the dungeons harder, but improves the value of the pickups that you find in them. I hear something churning, groaning out there. All right, go. Ah, he still got me. Alright, come on. Let me do something. I gotta defend myself. Alright, sedative up. Whew. That was close. Thankfully, this is not necessary to get to the final area, so you're not burning through tons of supplies trying to beat these winter lanterns. There's another one there. Don't want to let you see me yet. Unlike the fishing hamlet, you're not forced to run a long distance to try to get to these winter lanterns. You can sneak up on them. That singing is so creepy. Go. Nope, you don't get me this time. Alright, sedative, blood up. Doesn't really seem like a reward picking those things up because you don't get much out of those cursed ones. Ow! Oh, I didn't roll! It's gonna be another close call. Alright, come on. I'm gonna die. Oh, so close. I had the bottle to my lips. Oh, this area is gonna kill me too many times. I was chugging it. All right, try again. Unfortunately, there's no purpose to wearing this Menses Cage as far as stopping frenzy buildup. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Now, what I may need to do, in fact, maybe we just go ahead and do that. Let's go down this way. I don't want to go up there just yet. been thinking about it, I would have done this before we went this far, but I didn't think about it. I'm going to swap out some runes and get some frenzy resistance. If only for this one particular area. So, we're going to get rid of the Communion Rune. I don't think I'm going to starve for blood vials. Not even in the final fight in this area. It's really not that tough. I say that and I'll probably lose immediately and get stuck fighting that one as well. There it is. Alright, Frenzy Resistance. Look at that. Tons of extra Frenzy Resistance just from one rune. That is well worth it. Unfortunately, what's not helping us is the fact that I have 43 insight banked. If I got rid of some of that, it would possibly make these fights against the Winter Lanterns much easier, because higher insight, faster you build frenzy. It lowers your frenzy resistance having insight. Still ticking down. Man, that really did help. Hopefully it helps enough that I don't die multiple times going through this one area. Hopefully I make this jump. I like the subtle detail where if you try to... Alright, you get in this thing, the door tries to open and it fails. Ah, I died again! I was hoping I wouldn't have to do a ton of edits to get this last episode out. Now I'm starting to worry I'm going to have to edit a bunch of deaths just trying to get to this area and trying to get through the area. We're going to do this. Even if I have to do it on the way back up the elevator. And maybe that's the key. Alright, come on. And again, I don't really care about losing blood echoes. I can always earn more if I need them. I don't need them, but I'm... God damn it. Why did they make this jump so hard? The window's wide open. You should just be able to roll right out onto the ledge. Every time. It's like I hit an invisible wall and the body just drops right between the elevator and the window. This is embarrassing. This is honestly embarrassing. I thought this was going to be a quick one and done affair here, and it's going to turn into like half the episode. It's just me trying to get into a window. No, I'm not doing it this time. I'll get it on the way up. I'll probably miss on the way up, too. Alright, let's get it. Come on. Don't fail me now again. Go! Alright. I don't know why that's so hard. Alright, let's see if this frenzy protection is worth anything. Roll! Yeah, good dodge. And she hasn't frenzied me all the way yet. Alright, that was worth it. That was definitely worth it. One fight would have been worth 2 blood vials with the lack of frenzy build, or frenzy resistance, rather. Alright, we're clear. I see the lantern right there. Come on, I want you to turn. She's not going to turn. Alright, just do it. Roll! Yeah, good dodge. Whew. The other one knows I'm here, but can't see me. Alright, go. Roll! Oh, I didn't get out of the way. I think we'll just take the damage so that I can finish him off. There we go. And not in time. Oh, it was in time. Whew. That was close. And I got another blood gem for that. Multiples. Alright. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the only one you have to go through. I think there is another one you have to face. Another gauntlet of those before you can get to what we really want here. So we thought the dogs with crow heads and the crows with dog heads were weird. Now we have spiders with human heads. Owie! Yeah, that blood. I got ya. Oh, that's the wrong button. With the exception of the bowl cut hair that he's got there, that kind of looks like Patches. Patches the spider. Alright. As you can see, the walls are lined with more eyeballs all over the place. And, of course, they're all stuck up there with spider webbing. So, again, I don't think this is a literal representation of what we're looking at. I think it's symbolic. So this is what we came here for, ostensibly. This right here. You see that thing down there? Oh, no. What are you doing? That is what has been causing our frenzy buildup. This hanging mass of eyeballs and what may well be brain matter. And this is why we came up here. Bye-bye! So we will no longer be frenzied on the approach up to the cathedral. What little difference that makes at this point in the time in the game. I mean, we're really not that in danger anymore. We don't have to go through that part. It's done. Just normal spiders this time. Still dangerous spiders. Blood back. Oh! Winter Lantern! Okay. Let her walk where we can get some coverage. Go. Don't die, don't die, don't die. We made it. And get her. Uh-oh! Oh, we got bit. May I just take the damage to kill her off? Yep, and... oh, just in time. Whew. I think that was a lifesaver, putting that frenzy resistance on, coming down here. We got a choir bell. Now, I was fairly certain we had found everything of value, but it looks like there was still something else we could find. Choir bell, a special hunter tool of the choir, high-ranking members of the church. Fashioned after a bell that projects an arcane sound across planes of existence. Sound of this smaller silver version of the bell does not cross planes, but grants vigor and healing to all cooperators. So, as bizarre as it is that they wait until the very end of the game to give you that item, basically what it means is if you need help in the final battles, not only can you call people in, but you can heal them, which is nice. And I think we're done here. Head back to the other side. Carefully, because that is a death for certain. I think this is back down where the entrance is with all the spiders. I might be wrong, though. I don't know if there's any reason to go either of these directions. There does not appear to be. Alright. They do love their narrow ledges in Dark Souls type games. I don't see where to go from here. Ah, here we go. Oh yeah. I think there's something valuable up ahead. Not 100% certain. I think we don't have to worry about any more lanterns down this way, but you can see all of these bodies that had been in front of the brain thing there. And most of them have Great One's wisdom because they were frenzying, and as we discussed in the recap there, basically they were just receiving a ton of knowledge too quickly for them to handle and process, so it basically caused them to physically react to that rapid onset of knowledge. Do we get the item this way? I think we do. So the question is, do I want to go here? And does this lead anywhere? There's a valuable item in that chamber where the brain thing was sitting. We don't want to lose that item. That is maybe one of the most important things we find in the game. Non-lore related, I should say. No! Well, we don't have a choice. We gotta go down this way. I may have to rerun the gauntlet of the winter lanterns if that door led to somewhere important. Which I don't know if it does. I think it just loops us back to where we fought Mikolash. So, let's make sure we check everything here, because there is only one way to the item we want, and if I botch it, I have to go through all that nonsense to get it again. And I believe it is right there. Alright, let's do this. Whee! Hooray! We got a blood rock. And you can see the chamber here was lined with eyeballs. Again. So many eyes. Oh, here we go. So now we're back on the bridge connecting the hallway to the Mergo attendants and the area where all the spiders were. By the way, I was cagey about saying that, but the area is called Mergo's loft, so yeah, these are Mergo's attendants. The question we have to answer by the end of the episode is, who is Mergo? I like that you can see spiders that are eyeballs. Hadn't noticed that before. Come on, focus up. I'd feel bad for killing all these things, but I don't. I just don't. Hey, what up? Oh, come on, get in there. All right, got it. Got my blood back. Took her down a peg. I say her, I don't know if it's female or not. I think it's obvious. So, I mentioned when we came to this area earlier that there was an elevator that we could see that we couldn't quite get to just yet, and now we can. Now, just a couple seconds ago, we lowered this brain mass, and we saw it fall into the depths. Well, guess what? We're going to go take a look at that brain thing up close. Down, down into the deep black void. You can kind of see it there. Let's pull out our lantern. As soon as I figure out where it is. There it is. Doesn't help. Say hello to the brain of Mensis. This creature right here was ostensibly what the School of Mensis was seeking all along. This is essentially a very large version of the winter lanterns that we had seen all over the nightmares. They created it. They probably had no idea how to communicate with it, but we do. The School of Mensis wasn't focused on communicating with Great Ones. They were focused on finding them. They probably had no idea what to do. This is what we do. Give it a second. Anytime now. Ta-da! So we have effectively made contact with the Great One, and we are rewarded with the Moon Rune. Let's take a look at the Moon Rune. I think that's the first one we get. No, it's not. But this is, like all the others, a rune that gives us more blood echoes, and we'll read the description, although we may have already done so twice. A secret symbol left by Kareth, runesmith of Bergenworth. A transcription of Moon as spoken by the Great Ones inhabiting the Nightmare. Gain more blood echoes. The Great Ones that inhabit the Nightmare are sympathetic in spirit and often answer when called upon. So, even though this one was hurting us, causing frenzy on the way up the hill, maybe it wasn't doing so on purpose. Maybe it was trying to communicate with us, but because it was conferring so much eldritch knowledge in sight of it that we physically were unable to process it. And now that we've taken it down a peg and lowered it all the way down into the depths, it can't do that anymore. Us simply conferring upon them or communicating to them that, hey, we know how to do math. You know, waving my arms at a right angle. The Great One rewarded us with a rune. Now, there's one other thing you can do here. As cruel as this is going to sound, it has no purpose to our playthrough, but we're going to do it anyway. I'm sorry, Brain of Mensis, but it's time to die. cover. Takes a ton of damage. Almost done. So we get the living string for killing this particular great one. Head back up. And let's go ahead and take a look at it. The reason why I said it wasn't of particular use to us is it's another ritual material, but we'll read the description. Did I not get it? I thought it was a ritual material. Maybe it's a key. There it is. I don't know why I was missing that. All right, anyway. Living string, special material used in a holy chalice ritual. The immense brain that Menses retrieved from the nightmare was indeed lined with eyes on the inside, but they were of an evil sort, and the brain itself was terribly rotten. But even still, it was a legitimate great one, and left a relic. A living relic at that, which is a precious thing indeed. So, again, Menses came to this nightmare in search of a great one, and specifically this great one, because they wanted the eyes on the inside. But it turns out that this was not exactly what they were hoping for. It says the brain was rotten. So, they got what they wanted. Now, the question is, if they've got what they wanted, and we've eliminated the host of the nightmare, and the source of what they were looking for, why is the nightmare still here? Well, we keep hearing the cries of a baby. And you recall going all the way back to Yahar Ghul, and in particular when we went through the area known as the Hippogian Jail, there were notes on the ground talking about the nightmare ritual seeking an infant, or a newborn, I guess is the term they used, and that we needed to silence its harrowing cries in order to end the nightmare. Well, we need to go find that newborn. And I'm not sure where the elevator, the nearest elevator is. I'm guessing it's going to be this way. And I have no interest in fighting you, so see. Oh no, I may not have a choice! See if I can get her to swing at the gap. I cannot get her to swing at the gap. But you jump at the gap. Nope, she didn't jump at the gap either. Oh well, it was worth a try. There we go. Whatever. Alright, so there's the elevators. We're going to go back down, go back to the Hunter Dream, swap my runes back out. I don't think I need to worry about frenzy resistance anymore. It's going to come back to bite me in the ass, I just know it. And head to the last area of the nightmare. Shouldn't be too long. Famous last words. I mean, I'm looking at a map of it right in front of me, and it is fairly short. Alright, so we swapped out this one. And we originally had Communion. Yes, that one there. Alright, and since we're here, see if there's any more gems. We'll buff the Tonitrus with the Blood Rock that we found. So now it's at the max. And we will put any good gems that we have left on this weapon. probably aren't very many. That would qualify. Huh. So that, what does that do? Attacks versus kin down? No. Attacks versus beast down? No. Hit points deplete? No. No. We want our weapons to do damage. Oh. But we don't want to cost ourselves some damage against certain enemies. Well, that may be worth the trade-off. We'll do this one. And maybe it's worth it to do the one for kin as well, minus kin. That one there. Man, that is a lot of extra damage. We lose some in the trade-off against kin and beasts, but we get more than that just in the bonuses to our other... They're just raw physical damage. I don't think I found any bolt-related ones. Nope. And... Okay. So the Saw Spear didn't become nearly as useful as I thought it would be, probably because we didn't start upgrading it until near the end of the journey, so that's alright. The more important ones here are going to be the Tonitrus and my Saw Cleaver. Saw Cleaver covers the beast damage, the Tonitrus covers kin damage. And we're going to find both up here. So we didn't go in here, I don't think. And the device isn't operable, so I'm guessing it goes up, and that's a shortcut back to this area. So that makes sense. That makes sense. It's a shortcut from the bottom all the way back up to the very tippy top. Now, if you don't recognize the gentlemen in cloaks in front of us, those would be Shadows of Yharnam. Now, as we discussed in the episode when we fought the Shadows of Yharnam, they are attendants to the Queen. So one would be safe to assume the Tumerian Queen is somewhere nearby. We don't know where. We just know she's nearby. Hey, boys. What's up? Not quite the challenge they were the first time I saw them. Although maybe we took out her best guards and these are just what's left. Look at this guy. Yeah, the little dancing jack trying to get away from my attacks. Didn't work. I still kicked your ass. Okay, so that is a way back from an upper ledge that we can drop to this way. That baby's cries are getting closer all the time. Hey, look, it's a boar. I haven't seen one of these in a while. Let's see if we can get the drop on this big idiot. Keister. I'm sorry, Piggy, but your meat is so sweet. And you're dead. Now, we did miss one of the most disturbing surprises. If you actually see the front of the, what they're called is man-eater boars, his face is absolutely covered in eyes. I don't know if we see more than one. I think that may have been the only one that you see. I see an item back there. Can we get to that item? Curious. We can. This way. Probably not worth it. Nope. Not worth it. It's alright. One day we decide to come back to this playthrough and mess with a couple of weapons that we hadn't used. Well, now we have a way to get to them. Quickly. Got all the ritual materials or upgrade materials that we need. We may see another one of those big boars. There he is. Look at those things. Now, ideally, you don't want to take both on at the same time. One at a time, if you can help it. Hello? Piggy. Get right up to Keiser. Yeah. Turns out with all those extra eyes, Silk can't see the back attack coming. And that's just fine with me. Hi there. Brr. Oh, owie! Blood up. Blood up. Save! I'll take your blood. Oh, thank you. Again, game doesn't really give you an explanation for why animals of any kind are carrying blood vials. It's just a video game. Try not to think too much about it. Some more Shadows of Yharnam. Starting to get closer to that bell-ringing maiden, but we don't know where. Just in the vicinity. Let's have a whole squad of the Shadows of Yharnam walking away from us. I think she might be down here. Yep, there she is. Alright. Payback time! Oh! It was a trap! Where are you at? None of your tricks for you. No, no, no. Blood up. Obviously, they didn't expect everyone to go through the DLC and all the side content and level like crazy to get to the end of the game, so some of these enemies may seem a little bit underwhelming, and that's simply because we're probably way higher in level than they intended everyone playing through this game to actually be. This is probably a trap! It's not a trap. But it wasn't really worth the effort. And this leads us to the shortcut back down there, so whoop. Alright, we're making progress. Alright, there's the gank squad. We'll see if we can't draw out the ones that are not using fire first, so that we don't have to fight Fireboy. Seriously? He's the one who sees me, but not you idiots? Big swing! Come on. Well, these guys are really off their game. Impressive moves. Didn't hit me. Ah, one hit. Better tighten this shit up, guys. If I'm this close to the queen, you're not doing a good job protecting her. Oh, back against the wall. See ya. I think we've reached the boss. So I'll find out when we climb these. Yep, there we go. So the Shadows Yarnum were here, which means the queen was here. This is the Tumerian Queen, as we discussed before. The Tumerians, of course, are all tall, pale, lanky. In her case, you can see her hands are bound. She has a wound where her womb would be ostensibly, which means that she had given birth. And she is crying because, as you can see, she doesn't have the baby, but we've certainly been hearing a baby. The baby is in there. So what does all this mean? Well, basically, the School of Mensis went down into the labyrinths, found the Tumerian Queen, found that she was pregnant, and kidnapped the baby. The baby was required for the Menses ritual that created the nightmare. The nightmare was created, the baby was drawn into the nightmare, just like the members of the School of Mensis, and more importantly, we found the source of, or we found the reason that the School of Mensis created the nightmare, but we haven't found the source. The source is the baby. Unable to acquire Yosefka's blood vial. Interesting. So the question is, why is Yosefka's blood vial here? I don't have a great explanation for that. I'm sure someone out there knows exactly why it's here and has a great explanation. It could be that Yosefka was still alive, that the imposter Yosefka never killed her, and somehow Yosefka got drawn into the nightmare. I don't know. I'm not sure. I know there is a great theory out there somewhere that someone has to explain it. What we need to do right now is we need to activate the shortcut back to the entrance to the, right here, this. Get my 0 blood echoes back. Alright, we're ready to fight. Yes, I know I got 106,000 blood echoes that would probably be better used leveling up, but we don't need it. We really don't. This is not going to be by any means an easy fight, but it's also not going to be the hardest fight in the world. And here you can see the remnants of the School of Mensis that got drawn in. Obviously, these guys didn't survive either. And again, you can see on the feet of some of them, as well as their hands, they were shackled. They weren't all willing participants, and in fact, some of them looked like they were kids. So the school was just using anyone that they needed in order to complete this ritual. Anyway, we got a baby to go save. You see the carriage, or pram if you're from Britain. I'm here, baby. Don't worry, I won't leave you alone. Corpses all along the ground here. Not sure what that's supposed to represent. Whoa! So, we've heard the name Mergo quite a few times, and this is Mergo's wet nurse. What that may likely mean is the baby is Mergo. That wasn't bad. Let's try the other one, see how that does. Oh, way more damage. Yeah, we're gonna stick with this one. Holy lord. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, she disappeared. Oh, there's two of them. Nope. Uh-oh. Oh, no. No, no. No, 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 no. 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 Things are getting hairy. I don't remember this. I don't know, maybe I just beat the boss so easily the first couple of times I've never seen this phase. She does not seem to be aware that I'm smacking her in the ass right now. You'll also note, if you can hear the background music, and I realize it's very faint, that it is playing the same lullaby that you could hear from the music box for Father Gascoigne. Alright. Almost done. Whoa! Big swing. And it's over. Not difficult at all. The carriage is empty. But we have silenced the harrowing cries of the baby. We did it! And for a reward, we got 1/3 of an umbilical cord. Interesting. I don't know which one it is. I think it's this one. Yep, this is the one. Okay, so we'll read all three of them because the information that we glean from them is important. 1/3 of umbilical cord, a great relic, also known as the cord of the eye. Every infant great one has this precursor to the umbilical cord. Every great one loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. The third umbilical cord precipitated the encounter with the pale moon, which beckoned the hunters and conceived the hunter's dream. And it says what the item is used for, and it says, so they say, gain eyes on the inside. The next one. Provost Willem sought the cord in order to elevate his being and thoughts to those of a great one by aligning his brain with eyes. The only choice he knew if man were ever to match their greatness. And then the final one, every great one loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. This cord granted Menses audience with Mergo, but resulted in the stillbirth of their brains. So basically, they required a baby. They required a great one's, or 1/3 of an umbilical cord, and the blood and body parts that they use in their rituals to finish. But because of something we haven't discussed yet, the birth of the nightmare did not go as intended. And all these people basically died, and in some cases it looks like their heads kind of merged through the cages. So let's go back down and let the Tumerian Queen know we've saved baby Mergo. What up, pretty lady? We did it. Aw, you're welcome. She bowed to us. That was awful nice. Alright, so we did it, guys. We ostensibly beat the game. We do need a... Oh, actually, there's a lantern back here we can use. Let's go back this way. We could just use this lantern. So we did what we needed to do. We stopped the Mensis. Well, we didn't stop the Mensis ritual. We ended the nightmare that resulted from the Mensis ritual. So in theory, everything's done. We killed the great ones that were plaguing the town. We killed all the bad guys from the Healing Church and Mensis and the choir even Bergenworth. Oh my god. The Healing Church is on fire. Well, that's not good. Is it? Is it? Hey doll, what the heck's going on?
Good hunter, you have come. Dawn will soon break. This night and this dream will end. Gammon awaits you at the foot of the great tree.
Okay, thank you?
Well, let me stand.
So why is the house on fire? I'll just put it in strength. It does not matter. That's fine. Okay.
Farewell, good hunt. May you find...
I think I found plenty of worth in the waking world. But there is one other thing that we need to do. Very lore important, and we had not done it up to this point, but it's very important to see, just to explain what the choir was doing that was so awful. Or maybe it wasn't necessarily the choir that did it, but we need to see this anyway. So let's go check back in on the Cathedral Ward. Let the people know that we did it. We saved Yarnum. You guys? Well, Ariana's gone. And there's a trail of blood. Oh boy. Well, let's talk to the Dweller and the other two first.
Was it a beast? Or could someone from outside have come in and... I just don't know. Was it a beast?
So I don't know if he's talking about the blood or if he's talking about the old lady, because poor old lady's dead as well. Adela, I did it. You're safe. Everything's coming to an end. It's over. All right, let's go see what happened with poor Ariana, who left a blood trail leading down this way. We just received some insight. So it appears that Ariana gave birth to a great one. That would be her baby. Now, let's look at this baby a little bit closer. It's got these weird suckers on its face, a tail, the makings of tiny little wings. This is a baby Ebrietus. Ebrietus, whether it was intentional or accidental, possibly when she was being attacked, possibly just as part of her attempts to communicate with the other great ones that she has been left by, as they call her the left behind great one, she impregnated a bunch of wombs. As you recall, when we were going up to the orphanage, the area where the choir was seated, there were lots of these all over. Well, all of them were born from human beings. Ebrietus, whether she meant to or not, was impregnating dozens of women. who would in turn give birth to great ones. This is one of the ways that the great ones found surrogates.
It can't be. This is a nightmare.
Now, there is one more connection here that could be drawn, whether this is fair or not. I don't know if this is fully supported or if this is purely conjecture. What does Ariana have in connection to the Tumerian Queen? Well, as we had seen when we went through Canehurst Castle, the women of Canehurst traditionally wear clothing that is Bordeaux or wine-colored. What color is the dress that Ariana is wearing? That is Bordeaux. Ariana was most likely a member of the Canehurst royal family, and during the attacks that occurred on Canehurst Castle, slipped away and came to Yharnam. In the process of moving to Yharnam, she had to reinvent herself and became a prostitute. The Tumerian Queen is the ancestor of the Canehurst royal family. So Ariana, whether she realizes it or not, is also a Tumerian, although it's a distant connection. What do these two have in common? Both of them gave birth to great ones. So the Tumerians are potentially suitable surrogates for great ones. Maybe not everyone realizes they have Tumerian ancestry, but from what it appears, all Tumerians are capable of carrying and giving birth to great ones. Well, this is going to seem extra horrible, but Ariana has officially lost her mind, and this is an abomination that we are going to kill because I am a monster. I'm sorry, Ariana. Get her shoes. And let's go ahead and kill the baby. Oh, or not. Take two. There's purpose for killing that baby. That's the purpose. We now have 4 of these umbilical cords. So if somehow during your playthrough you manage to miss one of the others, you can find a 4th. And let me see if this is... There we go. So the description on this one says, every great one loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. And Odin, the formless great one, is no different. To think it was corrupted blood that began this eldritch liaison. So they say that this is the formless one Odin's doing. However, the baby looks very much like a Briatus. Is it possible that Odin is the same kind of great one as a Briatus? I don't know. The proximity to Odin, because this is Odin's chapel, could certainly explain why that is the name that they dropped. But let's open it back up real quick. There's one more thread I wanted to follow up on there. Oh, yeah. So, if Odin is a formless great one, and when we approached Mergo's loft and were attacked by Mergo's wet nurse, all we could see of Mergo's wet nurse was a bunch of rags wielding blades. We couldn't see what those rags were clothing. In theory, although they don't explicitly state this, that may have been Erden that we killed. I don't know if there's anything to support that, but considering Erden is a formless great one, and what we fought up there was literally a sentient pile of rags carrying blades, my money was on that being Erden that we killed. And perhaps taking the baby back to Erden was the key to unlocking access to the nightmare. Hard to say. But that is everything that we needed to do in this game, aside from finishing it. So, let's go back to the Hunter's Dream. Hey, what up, pretty lady? And I don't know if there's anything else we need to do in here. We're pretty much done with everything we wanted to do. I might toss on Accursed Brew and see if that helps me out in this final fight. Get rid of those, get rid of that. I don't know if there's anything. Well, we can put some blood vials on if we want some extra boosts. None of that. None of this other stuff's going to help us. Alright, so let's discuss where we are, because it may not be immediately clear. A lot of stuff happens in this game, and a lot of it happens all at once. So it may be hard to follow where we are and how we're at the end of the game. So let me try to explain. When we first arrived at the beginning of the game in that clinic, we asked about pale blood, because that's what we came here for. We assumed it was a treatment for illnesses. We were told that we came to the right place because Yharnam is the home of blood administration. And we were told that we would need to get some blood, but first things first, we had to sign a contract. What we did not realize when we signed that contract was we basically committed ourselves to the Hunter's Dream. Once we were tied to the Hunter's Dream, we could not escape. Every time we died, we would reawaken, and if we wanted to leave, the only place we could go was this Hunter's Dream. What was our goal? We didn't see because the contract was never shown to us, but our goal ostensibly was to end the Mensis ritual. The Mensis ritual summoned a nightmare. The nightmare had the Tumerian Queen's baby and a whole host of bad guys that we needed to kill. So in theory, we've finished the terms of the contract that we signed. If we go into the graveyard back here, or whatever it was that the doll referred to, this area right here that's fenced off for most of the game until the very end when we can now access it. We go in there, Gehrman's waiting. We've finished the terms of our contract. He will happily free us from the Hunter's Dream. However, there's something else that's been going on during the exploration of this game. Something that maybe we didn't understand. Maybe we saw it as horrifying. Maybe it intrigued us, and as we learn more about it, we've decided that we want to pursue the course of it as well. We had 4 different bodies of people who were seeking to evolve and ascend to a higher plane of existence. Berkenworth, through their studies of the graveyards, found Great Ones. Those Great Ones were ascended beings who existed on a higher plane than other people in the waking world. And all 4 of them sought to evolve in different ways. Berkenworth thought that the best way to do that was to implant eyes on the inside. They didn't know how to do that. They sought taking eyeballs out of other people, the members of the fishing hamlet. They had women employed to go out and attack random people with these eyeball scoopers and scoop them out because they needed those eyeballs as part of the attempts to surgically graft eyeballs on the inside. That didn't work. The Healing Church found a holy medium, which was old blood. They found someone or something down in the Tumerian labyrinth, the chalice dungeons, if you will, that had blood, and that blood healed people, but it had a secondary effect. If you consumed too much of that old blood, eventually you turned into a beast. The Healing Church saw that as the evolution that they were seeking. They were also wrong. That was not true evolution. It turned you into a mindless beast that attacked anything on sight in some cases. In other cases, as with Old Yarnum, some of those people only experienced a little bit of a transformation, and in many cases they retained their humanity a little bit. You know, they were still cognizant. They knew who they were and what was happening to them. At some point, the School of Mensis fractured away from the Healing Church. They had a line of theory on evolution that was more in line with Bergenworth. In their case, they sought to enter the dream world that they had been finding and using to traverse the world of Yarnum safely and take a Great One hostage, basically, and try to communicate with it that way. That didn't work either. The one that they actually found, the brain of Mensis, was rotten. It could have given them the eyes that they too were seeking, but the whole brain was rotten, and they said that the eyes were of an evil sort, so they were unusable. And finally, the choir was tasked by the Healing Church, they were high-ranking members of the Healing Church, of communicating directly with a Great One that they could find in the waking world or down in the chalice dungeons. How did they do that? Well, they started kidnapping people and feeding them phantasms or implanting phantasms and using the cost parasites to transform them into celestial mobs. Well, that would also be a form of evolution, but that was also uncontrollable because they couldn't control the Celestials as far as we could tell, and we have no idea if they ever gleaned any information from the Celestial mobs in their communications with Ebrietas. But there was one thing that was connecting all four of these different schools. One item that all of them had in their possession and had no idea that they were using incorrectly. This one item that may have ruined all of their theories because they didn't realize they were using it incorrectly. Almost all of them were in possession of 1/3 of an umbilical cord. I believe this first one we find in the abandoned Hunter workshop. What that means is that Gehrman almost certainly had possession of an umbilical cord and consumed part of it. He consumed it and he beckoned the pale blood that we've seen referenced as the moon presence, and it conceived the hunter's dream. I should stop flipping away from this page. I gotta keep talking about this. We found an umbilical cord on the baby that Ariana was conceived with, or conceived, I should say. That wasn't one that was ever consumed. It was just a part of an umbilical cord. I did it again. Sorry, I keep doing that. Provost Willem was in possession of 1/3 of an umbilical cord. This was likely the part of the cord they used to create Rom the Vacuous. Now, Rom was the first true success that anyone had in creating a Great One. Unfortunately, that Great One was vacuous. And what does that mean? They couldn't communicate with it. It was, for lack of a better term, dumb. It had absolutely no intellect from what we could tell. But it served a purpose because they used it as a bulwark to stop the Menses ritual, because while Bergenworth and Mensis may have had similar ideas on what was needed to evolve, their end goal was not identical. And finally, we found a cord in the possession of the Mensis, the School of Mensis. they used it to summon the nightmare. But again, they used part of an umbilical cord. So they summoned the nightmare, but it resulted in the stillbirth of their brains. So, with the exception of the one that we found, the extra one, all three of the people who ended up trying to use this, the Healing Church ostensibly, because this was what Gehrman used, Bergenworth, and the School of Mensis, incorrectly used the umbilical cord. They used a part of it. How do we know that? 1/3 of an umbilical cord. 1/3 of an umbilical cord. 1/3 of an umbilical cord. I don't think the only way you would find an umbilical cord is in 1/3. What most likely happened is they consumed a part of it, thought they had achieved what they wanted, and failed because they did not consume all of it. What did that note inside of the lecture hall say? 3/3 cords. In order to effectively evolve using the umbilical cords, you have to consume 3 of them. And no one did that. So we have 2 choices here. One, we can go to Gehrman. We have successfully completed the terms of the contract we signed, and he'll free us from the Hunter's Dream. But knowing that we now have a viable way to evolve, we could consume all 3, or in this case all 4, of these umbilical cords, and we're going to get that evolution. While I have never actually gone the easy way and actually let Gehrman remove me from the Hunter's Dream, we're going to go for the true ending of the game. We know what's going to happen if we consume these umbilical cords, and we're going to do that. We're going to consume them. You'll also note that we get a huge burst of insight for using these. Now, let's say for some reason you didn't find all 3 of the necessary umbilical cords, and you only consume 1. There is a different ending. It's not a very satisfying ending, but you can get a 3rd ending, and we'll talk about that once we finish the game. But we'll do the way that I intended to do all along, which is we're going to use all of the umbilical cords. Alright, that was all 4, correct? That was all 4? Alright, so we have consumed the umbilical cords. We are now, in theory, blessed with, or will soon be blessed with eyes on the inside. Let's go tell Gehrman that, hey, you know what, buddy? I changed my mind. I don't want to leave the Hunter's Dream. I have some far loftier goal in mind than successfully satisfying the vows of my contract. And let's turn this off because I don't need that. Oh, no. Well, I guess I have to put it in the inventory in order to use it. Hold on. There we go. Turn that off. I don't need it. I can see just fine. We're going to put on Black Sky Eye because this has been the useful one to me all this time. Now, many points in the game we are referred to as a moon-scented hunter. Now, what exactly is a moon-scented hunter? Well, there are all these flowers spread throughout the Hunter's Dream. These are almost certainly what is giving us the scent that everyone refers to as the moon scent. But we don't know that for certain. All right, let's go talk to Gehrman.
Good hunter, you've done well. The night is near its end. Now, I will show you mercy. You will die, forget the dream, and awake under the morning sun. You will be freed from this terrible hunter's dream.
No, I don't want that. I found something far more satisfying, sir.
Dear, oh dear. What was it? The hunt? The blood? Or the horrible dream? Oh, it doesn't matter. It always comes down to the hunters help her to clean up after these sorts of messes. Tonight, Gammon joins the hunt.
We'll see, buddy. I'm probably going to lose the first fight. Oh! Ow! Okay, that didn't go well. Oh, I dodged. Owie! I'd like to hit him once. There we go. Owie! Nope. Owie! Now, one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't tried to parry him. Let's give that a shot. Oh, I got it. Oh, he got me. He does not like that I use my gun. Here comes his transformation! Got some good chomps in on him though while he's doing it. Second phase. Ow! Had the same idea at the same time. Gotta take those chops while I got him. Owie! Oh, that was a big hit. Alright. What hit me? Ah, I didn't get it in time. Uh-oh. Heal up. Heal up. Oh, big hits. Come on. Almost done. Don't die. Oh! He was so close. He had a sliver. I got greedy. Well, the good news is the game doesn't end just because you lose that fight. You get to try again. Which we will. It's not over yet, buddy. You can keep the 9,000 souls. I don't need them. Ah, I backed up. Ah, better start this time. Ha ha. Ah, I rolled through it. Ouch. trading hits. Ah, I did it again. Shoot. Now the good news is I'm pummeling him right now. Oh, he's changing. Get in there. Ah, I missed some free hits. Oh, get in there. Oh, man. I'm getting the timing right. I'm just not hitting him. There we go. Sorry, buddy. I got it again. And I blew it again. Oh, man. So many parries. And I can't take advantage of any of them. Ouch. Oh, boy. Back up. Uh-oh. Help. Help. Ah. Ow. Ow. You jerk. Oh, get in there. Do it. It's over. So here's the good news and here's the bad news. We defeated Gehrman, so we're free to evolve. But Gehrman didn't create the Hunter's Dream. That thing did. Say hello to Paleblood, otherwise known as the Moon Presence. We defeated Gehrman, and Gehrman was the Moon Presence's surrogate. He needs a new child. Except he can't make another great one a child. And we're on our path to evolution already. So we just ruined his home. Now he's mad and he wants revenge. Oh boy. Come on, let me... There we go. That's probably not gonna work. Oh boy! He's psychic blasting me. Oh man, that hit hard. I'm not dead, but I can't use my healing. Oh no. I can't heal. There we go. Uh-oh, he did it again. And I didn't take advantage. Ah, crap. Well, gotta stay out of the way of his attacks until I can heal again. Alright, should... Oh. Ah, I'm dead. It's funny, I think every time I've fought the Moon Presence, I have beaten it on the first try. This is unique. I have no idea if I have to fight Garamond again or if I just go straight to Moon Presence. So we'll find out when we go in here and I have to fight the Garamond fight again, which wouldn't make any sense. Okay, cool. Just straight in. Hey, what up, MP? Ouch! I need some distance. There we go. Big hits, big hits. Uh-oh. Oh! Alright, let's get in here and try to get some blood back while I can. Alright, well, that wasn't too bad. Uh-oh. Oh, good. I was far enough away it didn't take. I think proximity is what causes that numbing effect where I can't heal. Oh, crap. Oh, no. I take it back. I think it's some fields that he generates that actually stop you from healing. I still can't heal? Come on. I need to heal. There we go. So close. We're close. And it's over. That's game, ladies and gentlemen. I'll make contact with you to finish. And our reward for all of our hard work, for consuming the umbilical cords as we should have, I'm now a great one.
Are you cold? Oh, good hunter.
And that's it. We have defeated Bloodborne. Pivot the mic up to a more comfortable position here, sorry. So, what exactly happened there? As we talked about before, I found the way to evolve into a great one that it seemed like no one else in Bergenworth or the Healing Church or any of the associated splinter groups ever figured out. You had to consume 3/3 of an umbilical cord. Now, where were the 1/3 of the umbilical cords coming from? Were they coming from children that were born as a result of impregnation by Great Ones? Were they coming from Great Ones themselves that attempted to give birth and failed? Maybe both. But the act of consuming them turned me into a great one, and also signaled that while I thought the acts that they had conducted in order to become a great one were reprehensible and worthy of punishment, what they were trying to achieve wasn't all that bad, so I want to become a great one. And I did, just that. Now, the other endings that you could have achieved in this game, and we won't try to get back to those, I don't know how exactly I would even do that. If you allow Gehrman to kill you, you get executed. He uses that burial blade to lop your head off. You wake up in Yharnam, and in theory, everything's been fixed. Now, I say everything's been fixed because Gehrman is still trapped in the Hunter's Dream, and for all we know, nothing got fixed. We simply satisfied a contract, and maybe there are dozens of existing contracts that all must be satisfied. The Moon Presence was still alive if we allowed him to kill us. The only way, in theory, we could have ended the Hunter's Dream was to get rid of the Moon Presence, and yet, at the end of the game, who picks us up? The doll does. So we're still in the Hunter's Dream. The difference is, the Moon Presence is gone, so now, in theory, we control the Hunter's Dream. If you only consume 1 or 2 of the umbilical cords and fight Gehrman and win, what happens is the Moon Presence comes down from the moon, does the same thing where he grabs you and presses you against his head, and essentially you become Gehrman's replacement. Part of their contract was that the Moon Presence tied him to the dream to serve as his child and provide for the hunters that came into the Hunter's Dream doing contracts of their own. He may have been the one who was offering those contracts. I don't know. But ultimately, we get replaced as Gehrman in the dream if we don't consume 3 umbilical cords. So, I know in the last couple of long plays that we had done, I hadn't actually done a review phase or score for those games. This is one of those rare instances where I feel it's almost critical that I do that, because it's... I think when we started this long play, I said this was one of my favorite games of all time. If I was being honest, I think this is now officially my favorite game of all time. The storytelling, while it's done in a way that some people may not like, I think is nearly immaculate. I don't know if there is a better story I've ever seen in a video game. It's tight, it's interlooping, it leaves just enough room for you to offer conjecture without being necessarily 100% wrong, and it's thought-provoking. If you were faced with the ability to become a different species, something elevated beyond the existence as a human, would you take it? And at what cost would you be willing to do so? So let's go ahead and do the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is the gameplay is just, I won't say perfect, but nearly perfect. If you are not adverse to difficult games, the system that From Software came up with 10, 15 years ago when they were still doing Shadow Tower games and Kingsfield games, and eventually moved on to Demon's Souls and then Dark Souls after it, is some of the best action RPG gameplay I've ever experienced. The system of using stamina to do your attacks, to dodge, to block, and having to almost do a rhythmic dance with your enemies when you fight them is just, it is perfect. I mean, I don't know if there's been a better action game I've ever played in my life. The story, again, just so good. What you see and experience and the choice you have to make at the very end, knowing what is laid before you if you take the time to break it down and make sense of the story. I don't know if I've seen a better ending to a video game. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. As for the bad, they didn't give you a lot of equipment in this game, and one of the things that Dark Souls has excelled at is giving you options. You have, different swords, heavy weapons, magic, ranged attack options, tons of armor and shields and all kinds of stuff that you can use. And this game pares it down to just a few items and a few equipment sets. And maybe that's not something that you want out of your video game. Maybe you like having all those options. They also took away your shield, and as we talked about before, I actually learned how to parry as a result of this game because I was so terrible at parrying when I used shields in the Dark Souls games, and the guns taught me how to parry correctly. Yeah, the game loops back around. Sorry if you're watching this. That's all right. We'll just let it play as I'm talking here. I don't love that so much. Again, they implemented the invasion system from Dark Souls. I guess if you like invading people or you like being invaded by live humans that can attack you, that's fun. And they did strip down where you could be invaded to just a couple of areas, but I have never loved the invasion mechanic in these games. I find it more of a distraction than an actual fun element of the game. And it doesn't make a ton of sense here. Like, there was an actual reason for it to exist in Dark Souls, and here, I don't know if it makes all that much sense. It just seems like it was a carryover from Dark Souls that they didn't want to get rid of. As for the ugly, I guess if you're squeamish, the fact that the entire game is blood, I mean, look at this. You're watching a monster emerge from blood, dripping it. Some of the acts that take place in the game may turn you off, but this is a horror game, and if those are things that bother you and you're still playing it, I question whether or not you made the right choice. That may be on you. Other than that, I don't know if there's a whole lot of ugly to this game. I think it is what they set out to make, and it is great. It's fantastic. Only other two things, and I don't think these are issues at all, but some people have raised the issue. The game only runs in 30 FPS. Big deal. I love this game, even in 30 frames. A 60 frame patch on PS5 would be awesome, but I'm not going to lose sleep over not getting that anytime soon. As well as loading issues that people had complained about in the past, which I guess I played the game after they had fixed them because they've never really bothered me. But let's go ahead and give this a score. This is going to be a first because I have not offered this score before for a game, but I think this more than warrants it. We do our score on Randars, 1 to 10 Randars, and this is 100% a 10 Randar game. If there was ever a game that I would heartily recommend to someone to play, even if they've never played a game before, just to watch it, to see what unfolds when they play the game, this is that game. I love it. This is my favorite game of all time. And I used to say that about Final Fantasy VII, but the story in that game can be very convoluted, and I don't think the graphics have aged all that well. But this game, I think 10 years from now, I think is still going to look great, and the story is still going to be maybe not fully airtight, but man, it is close. So that's going to do it for our long play of Bloodborne. This was a long episode, but again, if you skip through the recap at the beginning of it, probably turns out to be an hour and 45 minutes. But that was a lot of fun. I'm glad I played through this game, even if it was a very long play. And some of the other games that I've played through have been very short by comparison, but I think this was worth the effort to put in to make it. And I hope everyone enjoyed watching this show. It was a lot of fun to put together, even if it took a lot of time to get it done. And I can move on to some other projects. We may take some time off from the long plays for now and focus on just the core series, get back to making standard episodes for a little while. But thanks, everybody, for watching. And let me go ahead and do my traditional sign-off. I'll look at the note. Oh, seek pale blood. Yeah, sure. That sounds easy enough. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This was an absolute blast to play through this game, and I will see you next time.